in the gerontology field that this, at the cellular level, this is what we need to clean up. If we could theoretically clean it up, essentially, biologically, you wouldn't age. This was published in Cell Metabolism. You can go look it up. It's called Hallmarks of Aging. I don't think it's actually very readable, but whatever. But that picture is nice. And so if you could do all of this, you could actually backtrack this to a certain level. You wouldn't have the infirmities. You wouldn't have the tetanus curse. You could actually live chronologically longer, but not biologically age. But we would have to implement all of them together, because one or two of them have already been implemented, and it kind of sort of helps the mice, but they don't live any longer. And again, this is in mice, which are not men. So that brings me to the Q&A time. So I know I didn't cover a lot of ground on the science, but what I wanted to discuss, discuss with you guys is feasibility and desirability. You may still have questions about feasibility, because I probably didn't cover everything that I needed to. And the second question is desirability, which brings us down to the earlier point that I started with, which is treatment options and thinking. So thinking comes under feasibility, desirability, and feasibility is the treatment options. Do we want this? Do you want this? And if so, what kind? And what are you willing to invest? That's it. Thank you very much for sitting in this room.
Roy.
Yes.
You've got the steeply decaying expected lifespan curves.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know how the health span curves compare?
So that's the first. Okay. Yes. So the health span curves are non-existent because the measure that we use for health is called QALY. We have discussed this before, but for the sake of everybody else, QALY is a measure that's used by the WHO, and the way it measures health is by measuring your economic output to society. So if you are retired and 17 years old, you don't matter. QALY really measures economic output and economic incentives to society. Now, there is a way to measure health span.
What about delis?
Yeah. There is a very good way to measure health span. You can measure health span if you can show that you are not on this curve, the 8-year doubling mortality curve. So you can measure a person's mortality. You know what's the difference between a 20-year-old and a 40-year-old? The 40-year-old is going to live 20 years shorter. Period. That's the difference between the 20-year-old and the 40-year-old. If you can change that, that's your health. Look, so I was discussing with my godmother, who is 70, and she hates the term aging. Whenever I use aging, and I say that older people are less healthy, she says to use a different term. By the way, she's also the founder and the funder for Age UK, so she may have something to say about that. So over time, you accumulate damage, just like your car. And your car is never going to be as efficient as when it rolled off a lot, period. We can parse it many different ways. So if you have a 2005 Nissan Micra, like I do, I don't think anybody does, but anyway, in 2013, it's less efficient than 2005. No matter what I do to it, it is less efficient than 2005. Now, the Micra might still think that it's a Japanese car, so it's awesome compared to other cars, but it's not as good as itself in 2005. And that's the only measure that should matter, is you self-control for yourself, and that doesn't work. Period, you are less healthy beyond a certain point. So are you, at your 13-year-old self and your 25-year-old self, are you less healthy? I don't know. But I can always say that at your 25-year-old self, actually even there I could probably guess, but puberty does really help with certain things. But at the 25 and any other age comparison, you are less healthy, period. You just don't do biological things, or your biology in many ways just doesn't do the things that it needs to do. It doesn't produce the collagen amount. It doesn't produce the neuronal connections as it did previously. And that's just a fact. I mean, there's no, you can use any formula you want, but it's just not going to work. I agree that quali and daily are helpful, but the health span discussion comes every time I use this graph. You're just riding that train. There's no way to stop that train.
Sure. Well, actually, that's an interesting result. So the health span is mirroring the life expectancy graph.
I don't know if it's mirroring. I think so that there have been discussions about this. If we are living longer here, the 2010, 90, 60, are we living longer, healthier lives? So let's assume that we don't do any rejuvenation therapies, and the gods have defined our lifespan between this bracket, this rectangle right here. Can we optimize our lifespan till here? Maybe we can do some kind of metabolic damage control that can. But my point is that nobody can do that experiment. It would require so many man years and so many people to show. I mean, everybody here knows that for one molecule change in an experiment, how many things you would need to change. Like one molecule. If you were to move this out here, how long would the experiment need to continue on how many humans? So how do we know that red wine actually increases health span? How do we know that green tea, which have numerous molecules, not just green tea but red wine, increases lifespan? We don't know. Nobody has done the experiment. They're just guessing it. Everybody's guessing it. So next time when you hear news, it's all bullshit. It's period bullshit. It doesn't apply to a population. It may apply to you because you have a particular genotype or a particular makeup, so that one specific may apply to you, or you may have a disease state like morbid obesity. So it may apply to you, but it doesn't apply to the population. And nobody in newspaper ever says 5-2 fasting for 2.6% of the population some of the time. They always say it's for everybody. So this is what I'm trying to explain, is at a population level, it's extremely hard to give anything that goes beyond what we have already. So you could remove things from your life. That might help, like removing, I don't know, smoking or something like that. But we're already living as long as we possibly can within that rectangle. Like I said, I mean, this is ridiculous. Any more, and you would literally wake up and die on your 90th birthday. Like it's yes. And the other thing is that, are we living less healthier lives? Probably. That roller coaster, nobody would ride it if it was a real roller coaster. That is a much smoother ride down for those people who survive in the United States. That is a much smoother ride down. So they may be more robust than the ones that are surviving here, maybe. So I don't know. But what I'm trying to say is that we used to die of infectious diseases. We now die of just purely aging diseases. So we need to do something about it. And the only short-term thing is to do what we do with our cars. We take them to the garage to get the damage repaired. So all of us here knows what is a better metabolic car. So let's say that we could get into a body, okay? And that would be like a better metabolic body. We all know we would get into a Rolls Royce. Because 10 years later, the Rolls Royce engine has lost very little efficiency, whereas my Nissan Micra, no matter how Japanese built it is complete shit. So because Rolls Royce, like humans compared to mice, and Nissan compared to Rolls Royce, is optimally built. They take a long time to build a freaking one single Phantom. So it's brilliant, and it lasts a lot longer. The engineering is different. So you would get into your Rolls Royce. You would need to repair it less. You would live a lot longer. That's brilliant. So for humans, because we are dealt with whatever we are dealt with, we can do two things. We can go back to the basic and repair everything that we know. That is metabolism. Inordinately difficult to do. Trying to convert a Nissan Micra halfway around into a Rolls Royce. Or we could take the Nissan to the dealership as given by the little booklet, which I should do. So those are the two options that are available to us. And we're already doing the third thing, which is like dealing. with or ignoring the engine light when it comes on. Check engine. What's that? That's fine. Put a black tape on it. It'll work fine. Yes. Any other questions or discussions or anything? Yes.
So, is there any purpose to doing life-extension research other than to make it a bit more triangular?
No, but that's not. So no, because if we did this in the short term, look, that would help in the long term. I'm not saying that you cannot convert a Nissan into a Rolls Royce. You could, with enough work. I'm just saying that in the short term, it might be beneficial to take it for repair. I'm just saying that this can be done, and I was showing the consensus paper because we lay out how to tackle, and I also just briefly mentioned that we have actually implemented that, and to an extent that, these two of the damages, just ignore what they are, in mice. So I would say that the other kind of research, the one that is being done here, which cannot be implemented right now with green tea and 5.2, whatever, because the only things that are being implemented right now are you working on your habits of not eating much or something like that. There are no molecules really that are available to metabolize, or gene therapies that would optimize your metabolism. So since that's not being done now, everything in this category that you read in your news is utter quack. It's just bullshit. So that leaves us with this. This is already being done, so we already know a lot about this, which is dealing with the consequences, which is terrible because it's very, very difficult. If you don't take your Nissan in 50,000 miles and expect something magical to happen, it's just not going to work out. So I'm just saying that if you were to do aging research, you would do it on the consensus paper. You would do it on damage remediation. You would take your car to the garage and try to get it repaired. Yeah.
So why people don't concentrate on that? Is it? Do you say that it's the approach of general scientific community not to deal with those problems? Or?
So, I don't know. I built up the history in this talk to have an idea if you guys disagree with. I don't know why. I used to think
maybe it was much easier to do the other thing. So we are now kind of done with other things. So we start. And also I think that the middle thing is we need much more understanding of our workings to deal
for
with
metabolism.
Yeah.
So in the Nissan Rolls Royce example, you would need a lot more knowledge how to fit a Rolls Royce Phantom engine into a Nissan.
Yeah. So maybe you are just at the start. I don't know. I don't see what's your point to try to encourage that. I agree with you that those are important things we should do to.
No, so encourage this one. You mean cleaning up metabolic damage? Yeah, no, I do want to encourage that, but I don't know how. If anybody here has millions of dollars, please. Or actually, anybody who wants to collaborate on encouraging that one in any field, I would be delighted to that. I don't know.
You're saying people just aren't working on that second one. That's your.
Yeah, no, not.
But I think there is a clear incentive to do it because, for instance, if someone would make a supplement that says it's removing Alzheimer's plaques or whatever, then marketing is easy for that. It's not like it doesn't look appealing or something like that. So I don't get.
So there is one slight problem. So Alzheimer's is an interesting area.
Yeah.
You said for removing Alzheimer's plaque. So that's a clear disease state. FDA and EMA need a disease. Aging is not a disease. Aging is a causal factor, and I got into a lot of argument about causal, the word, but I'm going to use it. Aging is a causal factor. Time is the causal factor for accumulation of damage, which then causes these pathologies or these diseases of aging. So nobody can make drugs currently for stopping the decay of time. It's only when you have a disease can we treat it. But by that time, you are then working not on prevention, like we have vaccines, but you're working on dealing with the outcome.
But whatever the product is, the product can clean up the byproducts of metabolism.
Yeah, but that's what happens with diabetes, though. So currently we have diabetes research, which is output of aging, right?
Yeah.
And guess how diabetes success is defined? So in my thesis, I use all-cause mortality as a marker for whether it's a successful treatment or not, but nobody does. Guess how you define diabetes success? the patient didn't die in my ward, period. If a diabetic patient dies in the CVD, cardiovascular ward, it's counted as a success. In cancer, it's 5-year mortality. If the patient didn't die of cancer in 5 years, it's a success. If she died of something else, which is an outcome of cancer, but not called cancer, good to go.
So, for example, if you, in my end of the world, if you sit inside all day because you're scared of the sun, and let's say vitamin D status is important for some kind of mortality outcome, you end up vitamin D deficient, and you die of some other kind of cancer that's related to this, then the skin cancer doctors are going to count that as a win. You didn't die of skin cancer.
Yeah, exactly. And also the hard part is you can clean up plaques, which is the junk inside cells, but I read out the other things that you would need to do, because the patient would just die of something else. They are infirm. Your rate of damage accumulation is increasing, and therefore your chances of dying is doubling every 8 years. So if you don't deal with all of these things at the same time, you're not going to. So a drug for removing plaques in patients with Alzheimer's who are already
And mess up the other stuff.
no, not mess up, wouldn't help the other stuff.
Yeah.
So an average 80-year-old patient who would take that drug would just die of lung collapse or diabetes or CVD or
Do
something.
we have any idea what kind of approach would we need to make, like to deal with all this stuff?
This
Is it
paper,
like periodic operation?
itself outlines what we need to deal with, but I didn't necessarily want to put that up because of So this outlines in such detail, saying what we need for stem cell rejuvenation is stem cell therapies. That's what we need for another thing is anti-inflammatory drugs and blood-borne rejuvenator factors, elimination of damaged cells, things like that. So it gives an overview of what we need. Epigenetic drugs. Nobody even knows what the heck that is. No, actually, we kind of sort of know. But activation of chaperone. So we have general ideas about what we should do, and one or two of those domains have been implemented in mice. Maria Blasco's lab, who is the lead author of this, maybe the senior author of this paper, has implemented 2 of these strategies in mice. But you will have to implement all of these things together in order to.
Yeah, but is it the only way to like research all of them, to do them one by one?
No, you just you do it distributed. So Maria Blasco's lab can handle 2 things, and then other labs can handle other things, and so and you can bring it all together in an organism. Why would you need to do it all together? Well, yeah.
Okay, so you said that the 2 things were kind of fixed and it didn't influence a lot of the lifespan, right? Of these 9 things that cause aging.
Sorry?
You said it, 2 things that cause aging here in the rat
Yeah.
were kind of approached, but they didn't do a lot of influence, right?
No. So Maria Blasco's lab deleted senescent cells. Clearance of senescent cells. This blue one here.
Mm-hmm.
She did that in mice, and they didn't get couple of or 2 or 3 different diseases, but they still died at the same rate as normal mice.
But how can you, if you don't understand how the networks of these things interact, how can you claim that you need to approach all of them? Maybe it's sufficient to extend lifespan very significantly to approach only a few of them. I mean,
Yes. So that may be the thing. So by the way, originally the talk was titled, before Thomas rightly changed it, is called The Story of the Night, which was I was only going to tell you the story of these things. So all diabetes is more of some of these things and less of some of these things. All cancer is more of some of these things and less of some of these things. So you can think of it as like different notes. So you're right. So maybe if we only tackled 5 of them, 5 of the major ones, then you could expand. You could push out that bottleneck that we had at 100, possibly. I don't know. It hasn't been done, so I can't tell.
okay, but it's not necessary. You can't claim that you have to approach all of them at once because that's not necessary.
Well, it would be. I'm not sure if you could increase maximal lifespan. maybe you could push out mean lifespan, but I'm not too sure that you can push out maximum lifespan because your rate of accumulation of damage depends on two things. Your genetic makeup, that's why super centenarians or centenarians kids live just as long as centenarians. So they're accumulating damage at a slower rate comparative to the population. And the second thing is just how much time you have had. I'm not sure that if you stopped 5 of these things, that the other system wouldn't accumulate more damage. I'm not sure, but of course.
Sure, but also, I mean, there could be an argument that like if there was a better understanding of how those things interact, then practically we could approach first those that influence lifespan more, and then those that influence less.
So this is a slide that I had, which is the engineering versus science-based approach. So the science-based approach always calls for more knowledge, and I'm saying that we are running out of time. So the engineering approach, but science and engineering would have to work together at this point. By the way, please go read my article if you can, called The Lust for Life, which details why it is not a physics problem. So I'm not saying that to break any speed of light barrier. These are solvable biological problems. So in mammals, you have a range of between like 2 years and 300 years. Like just mammals have that much of a lifespan difference in different mammals. The 300 years is bowhead whales, by the way, in case you wanted to know. So we can live sufficiently longer. So it's not a physics problem. So you may be right, 5 things and maybe we can live 200. I'm not so sure. I don't think so. Go on.
So a bunch of these things said are like linked to cancer and because they connect to cancer. So why, to understand why would like, is it not of interest to like people that are researching how to like find a cure for cancer or something, like how to deal with some of these things?
So by the way, this paper is called Hallmarks of Aging, which is an homage to the 1999 cancer paper called Hallmarks of Cancer. They use the exact same drawing. So they break down cancer into 5 little boxes here, and that's what causes all cancer. By the way, what causes all cancer, except for prostate cancer for men. So you should always check out diseases. A disease of aging, it has a unimodal distribution, as in it increases over time. Whereas things like prostate cancer in men have a bimodal distribution. They happen twice. They happen once with aging and once when we're going through puberty for some reason. So anyway, besides that and a few other cancers, most have unimodal distribution, which is you have to accumulate damage over time in order to get cancer. I know there are some young people that get cancer. I realize that, but by and large in a population, it's a unimodal distribution. So your question was, wouldn't cancer researchers work on?
Why are they interested in this?
I think domain specificity. So cancer researchers took that paper, and every cancer or every biology undergraduate that is kind of specializing in cancer or master's student knows that paper. But then they promptly ignore it because they're working on some specific area. Biology, especially molecular biology, is so specialized that people are working on certain types of cell wall proteins, and they really can't talk to people who are working on mitochondria or something like that. They're extremely specialist. So why aren't cancer researchers working on this? I don't know. I don't think cancer researchers necessarily have to work on this. Anybody could work on this. They could pick off anything that they think is an issue. Mitochondria is an issue in cancer. Deregulated nutrient sensing is an issue in cancer. Mainly, cancer is an issue of that thing that I called the mutation in the nucleus. So saying that every cancer researcher knows that, but how do you go about fixing it is an issue. Yeah.
So why is the bearded man so optimistic?
I think because he drinks a lot of beer all the time. I don't know what his blood alcohol level is, but I'm going to prick him next time I see him. Which reminds me, he's here next week. So he's giving a talk next week. It's at the pub over there, so you guys can come and drink it. It's the Cybar Oxford thing that I run with my friends. So that would be, yeah. Sorry.
And aren't the majority of those things what Aubrey agrees with as well, though?
So yeah, he put out. I try not to mention his name a lot, but yeah, he put out the SENS plan. The SENS is his network for negligible senescence, and he put out no, you don't get. And he put out 7 plans, which included all of this stuff, and missed out a few like epigenetics. But yeah, he basically put out the same kind of consensus plan.
So do you agree or disagree with him?
There's nothing to disagree with. I agree completely on the sense plan.
Yeah.
Because forget me. That's why I brought this one. If anybody, so everybody may have. So there are some memes that we all know, regardless of whether we are in a university. Something is called like a high-ranking journal, or journals that are high quality. You guys all know this meme, right? And that means papers published in it. The only reason I showed this off because we all know this meme. This was published in the highest-ranking journal, period, in biology, and probably in any field. This has got some of the highest. Francis will back me up on this. This is cell metabolism. There is pretty much almost no other journal that has higher impact factor than this. So I didn't want to bring out Aubrey, but this is basically Aubrey's thing. And they published this last year in cell metabolism. This is a consensus. Aubrey was not involved with this. This is Maria Blasco and a couple of other colleagues from Spain and US. So yes, so the entire gerontology field, as if there is a consensus of cats, to agree on this plan. It's just implementation. So the quicker we get resources allocated to this, the quicker we can implement it. The biology is there. It's just implementation. How quickly can we turn this around? And this is the optimism of Aubrey that you might be talking about. Aubrey thinks we can turn it around in 20 years. And for that, he has so far collected $60 million-ish. Don't quote me on that number. So he's funding research using that money on each one of these avenues. He has 4 PhD students here in Oxford now, I think, or more. And he has a summer internship as well here in Oxford, in case anybody is interested. Any other? Go on.
Suppose it takes those 9. Can the brain work forever?
I don't know. So that's pretty much the other question. We don't know exactly what would happen. So Colin Blakemore, who did the debate, Colin Blakemore was the head of MRC. We have had this discussion with him as to what would happen to the brain. Most people think that it should be fine. Actually, it should be better than fine. But we don't really absolutely completely know what would happen to the brain. In the mice, with the cellular senescent things, this one, their brain seemed to work just like the normal mice. But that was just one thing. So I think, personally, I would think it would be fine. But maybe you will forget all your sorrows. Maybe you will be just Californian all the time.
Yeah, so the approach here, which Aubrey was doing 10 or 15 years earlier, is to approach it as a broad question, like what necessary conditions are there for deterioration that goes with aging?
Yeah, I mean, I brought you guys to the story that it took a long time for us to understand that aging didn't evolve. Aging is not a gift from gods, or aging didn't evolve. It is just a consequence of living. You live, you die. It's metabolism that causes pathology. And it's the consequence of your metabolism that causes you to die. So now that we are here, which is very, very recent, that we realize that, oh shit, this only happens because we live, which is then Aubrey's consensus. Aubrey was then looking for, can we list all the things that cause the damage? If we can, so these are all the things that are the output of life. These are all the things that accumulate damage. And if we can clean this, then we are golden. It's what?
If we can retrofit a hybrid motor to your Nissan Micro, and retrofit brakes and retrofit wheels and so on and so on.
So that's another. So have you guys heard of regenerative medicine? So that's a whole scale replacement of your organs. So we have been doing heart transplants and bladder transplant, not really bladder transplant, but transplants for a while. Now, in the age of stem cells, we can grow you an entire organ from your cells, from your own stem cells. So we take the scaffold from a pig, spray on your stem cells, that can be taken from your bone marrow, or if the Nobel Prize a couple of years ago for induced pluripotent stem cells are any example, then your skin cells, just a couple of hairs, will do, and then just spray it on the bladder scaffold or the heart scaffold, and then put it in. Now, the biggest thing that has been done is bladder and trachea that has already been implemented. So if you look up trachea, Karolinska, you'll find the guy who has a trachea that was made from his own stem cells. But yeah, so that's the low-hanging fruit. That's the next 10 years period. I mean, there's no argument about that. Old and grumpy institutions like National Institute of Health are also agreeing on that. That the whole scale replacement of parts, new brakes, new tires, you can get that next 10 years. Now, will it be from your bone marrow or from your skin cell? There is some debate. Skin cell would be awesome because you don't have to tap your bone marrow and you have plenty of that to go around. That's the low-hanging fruit, is the whole scale replacement of your organ. But guess what? People with heart transplants, even with awesome heart transplants, don't live forever. They don't live any longer. They may even live shorter than the average person. So yeah, I mean, that's the low-hanging fruit. But if we don't do this, you're still dealing with the outcomes. You're not preventing or attacking the causal agents.
Okay. Yeah.
Actually, there was some research. It's not on humans, but on it was done with computers where they kind of modeled young people and older people, and actually they managed to show that maybe old people don't think slower and their brains don't think slower.
Yes.
Because they are slower, but because they have more data.
Yes. So that's called fudging the tests. I saw that example. Yes. So that's again. So if you guys, I don't know if you have drinking games in Britain, but every time you hear these key terms, healthy aging, take a shot. Like every time, there's no such thing as healthy aging. Just like there's no such thing as a healthy cancer. Period. Every 8 years, your probability of dying is doubling. If you call that healthy, then great. You're only healthy relative to your same age counterpart. But guess what? That doesn't help you when you're decrepit. I had this debate with a fantastic researcher from Cambridge, which I'll remain unnamed. And this point doesn't make, and they just, all they could do is to point out at me that I'm not my optimal potential of a 30-year-old, which is true. I should be my optimal, but comparing to others is what we do now. If you compare yourself with your self-controlled 25-year-old or 20-year-old, whatever you want to, you're not healthy. I'm not healthy. I'm not healthy for a 30-year-old anyway, but or whatever. But there is no such thing as healthy aging. You can parse it different ways to make it come out. I mean, everybody here probably has done some kind of modeling. You can make any model. You can put in any function that turns the input into the type of output that you want. So that one.
No, I'm just saying it makes sense to think that there are limitations to brain when we live longer. I think it's reasonable to think.
But that's only because the brain continuously takes decay and damage, just like any other part. Obviously, like we accumulate memories, and I don't see how the brain would have unlimited capacity to hold store
all
memory. Yeah, so that's
even without decay, I think there are limitations. Right?
Yeah, so there may be. We don't know.
Yes,
yeah.
that's all.
Okay,
Thank you.
Let's thank Avi for his great talk. And feel free to stay for longer. We have lots of food, and
yeah, we have lots of food.
And in a few minutes, me, the speaker, and whoever wants to join will be going to some restaurant.
Cafe Tarifa, in case anybody wants to come along. Cool. It's on the